All right, guys, welcome back to the next episode of the Grand Prairie PD podcast. I'm your host, Nate, here with Whitney.
Hello.
Katie is off doing Katie things again.
Usual.
Yep. We are here with Sergeant Greg. Try to stick to first names.
That'll work.
Pro Greg or Gregory?
Greg, please.
Greg? Huh? Yeah.
Gregory.
I hit a nerve with the Gregory.
No, not that. The last person to call me by my first name was my dear departed grandma. Not even my mom uses it, so I don't want to feel like I'm that 8-year-old sitting in that church pew getting in trouble. So let's leave that alone, please.
Okay.
We want to reduce attention.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's only good fun.
Well, we were just talking about how you are in charge of you're a sergeant over our academy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of digging into a little bit of your background, and I realized we were just chatting instead of
What we're here for.
Right, what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
So you want to kind of start us off and introduce us to your early life?
Sure. So I'm from Texas. I grew up on a small farm about an hour and a half away from here, oddly enough, in Parker County. No relation, although I'll claim that every day as much as I can. Both my parents were teachers, and originally thought I wanted to be a teacher. And then mom and dad showed me what their combined paychecks were, and then I decided I didn't want to be a teacher anymore.
Right.
Went through that typical youth indecision of what I wanted to do. First, it was computer programming, which I had a cousin that does that. Very lucrative.
I was going to say, especially give 80s?
How old do you think I am? 80s? We're the same age.
You're
What's happening?
5 years older than me?
40.
Yeah, you're 5 years older than me.
Okay, yeah.
What about
So
80s?
we're talking like late 90s.
Meaning your birthday.
Yes,
Sorry.
I was
Right.
born in the
Born,
80s. Yes.
okay.
Goodness gracious.
I was like, am I for
Right. It's just
Bring
like,
me
I'm
on the
not
podcast.
I was exactly
and
right,
insult me
yeah.
here. Anyway, but no, so we're talking like late 90s or 2000s.
Yeah, so timing for technology.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
great. But, he'd work for 18 months, make a lot of money, and then he'd be out of work for a year looking for a contract.
Oh, crap.
So I said, I don't want to do that. And then I got hooked up working for a pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician. Did that for 6 years, worked for Walgreens, loved working for Walgreens. Thought about going to pharmacy school. But at the time, there was nothing local where you could do that. You had to go to Lubbock to Texas Tech, U of H, Austin, and the closest one to us actually was Southwestern Oklahoma State up in Weatherford, Oklahoma.
Oh, well.
But I didn't want 6 years of student loan debt.
Right.
And the ceiling on that
Is
business,
that how long pharmacy school is?
Yes.
Yeah.
They had just transitioned to requiring a doctorate in pharmacy. It used to be just 4 years. I got a cousin that got her PharmD from Houston, and she's a research pharmacist in Houston. But I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I just kind of got listless. My wife and I, we were high school sweethearts. We met when we were 15 years old.
Wow.
And I knew we'd been dating for a little bit. And I told my friends, I'm going to marry that girl. And so this was our 20th wedding anniversary this year.
Whoa.
So,
It's a very small town, Texas.
oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So, I
yeah.
grew up in Mineral Wells. So,
Yeah.
it's funny. You look back, all of the people that I went to high school with. There's quite a few of us that married our high school sweethearts, and
Really?
we're all still together, thankfully.
And my partner from Dallas, he's married to his high school sweetheart. I think they've been dating since they were 14, 15, something like that. Yeah.
Yep. It's I like to say that that I won the lottery on that one, and she settled for me, and I guess it's all worked out well. I got 2 kids. My oldest is 18. Youngest is 13. And but anyway, so I was looking for something to do. My wife and I decided we're going to move far enough away to where we're not close enough to the drama that happens with the family, that often happens in families, but we're still close enough that we were still going in for weekends and plenty of time to see the family.
Right.
And so we moved out here to Arlington and Grand Prairie, and I met a couple of guys that were cops here, and that was right at the end of this major hiring blitz that the Metroplex had done. And like salaries had gone through the roof. Academy classes were going just left and right.
By early 2000s?
Yes. 07 is when I applied here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, well, actually late in 2000 now. And met a couple of guys, and they said, you ought to give this a try. And so I did, and here we are 17 years later. And I've been pretty fortunate to have a pretty good career here.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, even hear you saying 07 and equate that to almost a full career. I'm thinking about me hiring in 2012. It's just like, holy crap, like it flies, man.
Oh, you're telling me? I could almost think back to my early days as a baby patrol officer. It's funny, the next time you're at the training center, go walk around a little bit, and we got all the, like we have in here, the nice pictures on the wall. Well, there is a picture in there of third phase rookie Greg Parker at 23 years old, and sometimes I'll walk around and I'll look at that kid and I'll go, oh, if only I knew then what I knew now. Wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
I'd change a few things, like, I'd lay off the sodas at 3 a.m. from Quick Trip as often as I did. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't change a thing. Really wouldn't.
I was talking about that to a buddy because we were talking about because his dad is a police officer, and his dad basically told him, like, you don't need to go into police work because it basically gives you a cynical view of the world. And he knows a couple of police officers, but he went another route, and he's just saying he's glad that he did want to go in a different route. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, because you do wind up having a negative view on a lot of things, even if it's not an individual. Sometimes it's just a situation. You kind of always expect the worst thing to happen, or you're planning for the worst. We were talking about, I was like, I don't know if I would change it or not. I could think it'd be nice to not always have that knee jerk, oh crap, what if this guy does that, or always watching people, kind of be able to relax every once in a while. But then again, is that really a better way to be? I don't know.
Right.
Well, I went to a conference a couple of weeks ago, and this was one of the topics that got brought up. It was a leadership topic, but it's also something that you don't have to be a formal leader to go through this, and it's a recruiting thing as well as an internal retention and morale kind of thing. And it's like, you hear a lot of cops that say that. I wouldn't want my kids to do this job. And when I think about that, I agree, but for an entirely different reason. This is still a very honorable and noble position.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's get down to it. It's fun. Yeah. Patrol's fun. I mean, what other job can you do at 2 o'clock in the morning, chasing a stolen car at 140 miles an hour while Motley Crue is blaring through the radio? I mean, let's have a good time and go out and chase bad guys.
You can do it.
You can.
Yeah.
You can. I'm not going to say that I have done it.
Idea.
I mean, just turn the radio down. But I think, and this kind of goes to something that, we're kind of touching on. I don't want my kids to see some of the things I've seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there was a time my daughter was kicking around the idea of going the CSI route.
Oh, God, no.
And I was like, okay. And your daughter, my baby, she's my oldest, and you want to protect her. And I told her, I said, hon, I've worked several child deaths. I said, do you want to go take pictures of that infant that's dead? And so that changed her attitude real quick. Right. She's still kind of kicking the idea around a little bit, but she, like me, she can't quite make up her mind what she wants to do just yet. Yeah. So, but still, we while we may not want our children to do this kind of thing for that reason, this is still one of those that's like, I talked to somebody the other day that they are a 6th generation peace officer. Wow. I mean, this guy's lineage dates back to the Civil War days. And they were as some kind of peace officer, and he's the last one. He said that he's got 3 daughters, and none of them ever talked about wanting to be the police, and he's not going to change that. Right. But it's still upon us to make sure that we are our own best recruiters and our own worst enemies. In like every police officer, we have a tendency to focus on the negative because we see it all the time, when yet we don't. Sometimes we forget about how good we do have it, especially at this agency.
For sure.
And like you came from someplace else, and I'm sure that you saw some of the same problems when you came over here, but then there's a reason you came over here. Yeah. And this was the only place I ever wanted to be. Yeah. I knew the guys here. I knew a few of them anyway, and so we could probably do a better job on our own on the recruiting front. But on the flip side of that, I'm not going to point at the guy that's on the soundboard. That's my recruiter, but he's he's doing a good job as it is. But it's just nowadays, when I tested back in 2007, there were 300 people that tested for 7 spots. Our last test, we had 65. And we want more.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, if our background unit is absolutely inundated with people we have to look at, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it happen.
You'll pay me comp time to help out.
Okay, I'll write that down. Mhm.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
You know, that's a very hotly debated topic. I think you can look at it as a lot of different things. Number one, you can look at the way that, I mean, the easy button is to blame the media and how they perceive and cause perceptions of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Which that exists.
It does exist. You really can't say it's the money because, you know, back when I started, everybody talked about, you know, you're going to work 70 hours a week and you're barely going to be able to put food on the table. We are very well compensated.
My last agency, I was working 7 days a week like the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years I was there. Again, just to pay apartment rent and stuff.
And we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Like 6 figures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoever heard of that as law enforcement
Yeah, so we're
officers?
cops.
So it's not that. You know, I think that there's an element of generational differences other than that we were all preached to each other about maintaining a life of service in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know if that's been continued because, you know, at some point you think about our generations, you were looking at how can I make this world a better place? And it's like, well, I'm going to go to the military. I'm going to go be a teacher. I'm going to go be, I mean, what do all kids want to be when they grow up, right? Firefighters, policemen, and astronauts, right? And if we instill those values of service, I think that we can kind of see that more often. But also, there's so much going on in this world that it's just the options are so much more than what we were doing.
Yeah, I was just going to say the options. I mean, when I think about people getting paid to just game, but you can watch how I game, and that is my stream of income. And I can go to college for that as well. I mean, that was not an option always. So
who would have thought esports would have been a thing?
Yeah.
But we're competing with so many other agencies. We're competing with so many other industries that slowly but surely that pool is getting shallower and shallower. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us not only at the higher levels of the city and the police department, but also the officer rank, the silver badges and some of the other gold badges to really, what can we do to reach out to those that may want to come work here, both that are already sworn. I mean, you know, back in the day, you didn't poach from other agencies. If you were a recruiter, if you were somebody in the executive rank, you left other agencies alone.
Really?
Yes, that was almost it was an unwritten rule. But now, especially with lateral entry programs, it's almost like all bets are off, Jack. And so,
See, and I think that's how it should be. I think a lot of your quote unquote unwritten rules or your hey, this is just how we do things always tends to be most helpful to the people that are not trying the hardest. And it's something like, oh no, you don't poach our agency. An unwritten rule like that does nothing but let them continue to treat their guys like crap. And they don't have to worry about somebody else coming and showing them, greener pastures. So I'm a huge. It's such a balance because we were talking about this the other day. It's like on the one hand, you want someone who views this as a calling and is doing this for the right reasons, but at the same time, as an individual and as someone who, I look at my motivations now and what drives me every day, and it is very much what are you doing for me? Like the way I spend my time away from my family, it's not just me, but my family had better be adequately compensated, whether that's in a schedule or money or benefits or security, and not worrying about your department prosecuting is a big one. But it very much is hey, what are you doing for my family, for me and mine? But then also there's a limit to that because at a certain point, kicking the door in on an apartment a lot of times isn't going to make sense. You're not going to be able to put that in some kind of cost to risk matrix and make it even out. So you definitely have to find those people that still have that drive to do it, but then also demand that your department treat them well enough to make their time worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that balance is doable. I mean, it really is. So who knows? I mean, I imagine one day someone will 15, 20 years from now, someone's going to look back on on our profession and go, why was it the way that it was? And we may have some better answers then, because right now it's a toss up. I mean, you could.
So one thing I wonder is generationally. And there's a lot of talk about options, and there's a different there's a lot of things that are acceptable to make. Like, because before, like when we were growing up, playing video games is like it fried your brain, and
right,
don't do it, which I'm not convinced it doesn't. But like you said, now you got kids. We actually saw a brother of one of my 11-year-old's baseball teammates, just went to like I don't know if it's Call of Duty or Fortnite, but like took third in the world at their World Series. So he makes money. Like he's doing that all the time.
Right.
It's awesome. But on top of all that, there's a reduction in how comfortable our generation is in interacting with people face to face.
Yes.
And I almost wonder how much of that plays into it. Because you go to like a restaurant now, and if you have a waiter who's talkative or doesn't seem like they're coming off of a script or is making eye contact with you as personable, it's almost like
That's a treat.
oh, cool.
It's unusual.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how much of it is that generation just not used to face-to-face interactions, and like that's all you're going to have in this profession. Like you have to be willing to do that. I haven't been an FTO in several years, but I wonder how much of it that.
Well, there's been a couple times where we've actually, as a training cadre, have discussed we're going to go dump our recruits off at the mall, and you got to go find 5 people, and you have to engage in a consensual encounter with them and talk to them. And of course, logistically, from a safety standpoint, that's a terrible idea. But on paper, it's like we've got to do something to encourage that, because you're right. The communication is going to get us in trouble on the street, or it's going to get us out of trouble on the street.
Yeah.
And if you're unable to effectively do that, then that's going to result in probably a lot of paperwork for you.
Yep.
So that's certainly a challenge that we, as an academy staff, as well as the field training officers, are just having to overcome left and right.
Really?
But it's doable.
Right.
But it's certainly a challenge, and that could be a thing.
Yeah. And it's like talking about like going and finding people. It's one of those things that I would think if you just like somebody kind of like doing this. I was super nervous when I did this for the first time. Super nervous when we put cameras in here for the first time. But if you just force yourself to go do it, like traffic stops. Like when I walk up and talk to somebody now, even like some guy almost hit me driving to an extra job not long ago. So I want to do my first traffic stop in a couple months. But it's like it comes right back to you, and it's like I'm talking to you, and all the like I'm doing nothing besides speaking and then picking up on the different clues. When like I'm not for a second thinking about the conversation or how it's going. If you're looking at me like an idiot, if I care, if you're looking at me like you do it enough, you kind of become used to it, So definitely, maybe have to step up how we're throwing them in the deep waters of conversation.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So obviously you haven't always been sergeant over the academy.
No. So we'll start back over in 07. So like every person, when I finished the academy, and I went to a regional academy. We went to we went to COG over in Arlington, and COG really prepared me mentally as far as the material to be a police officer here. And then when we got here, it's like, okay, now the real work's going to begin. Had the normal field training experience, really nothing out of the ordinary. And then hit patrol September-ish of 08. Real quickly found out that I had a niche, if you will, or an absolute passion for traffic things, all things traffic. So in 2009, started down the road to impaired driving enforcement, really got into that and realized I want to go do some DWI stuff. And so 2010, I went through drug recognition expert school and told the traffic sergeant at the time I want to be a DWI unit. And
you were as a street officer, you are my favorite.
I hear that quite a bit. I love working wrecks and I love taking drunk drivers, even to this day. So here we are. I went through DRE in 2010. I'm still a DRE. I'm a DRE instructor. So I get to travel across Texas on behalf of TMPA, teaching impaired driving courses.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It can be tedious, but it's a lot of fun.
I'll say that's an extremely difficult school, is it not?
Yes. Across my time in police work, and I've been through almost every reconstruction class that you can go through. And are you familiar with recon at all, Whitney?
Like during an accident or after, and trying to piece together what took place?
So you're doing a lot of math. I mean, there's been a couple times where some of the formulas that I had to use, you're taking a legal pad and flipping it long ways because the formula has like 10 to 12 variables in it. DRE was harder than that combined.
Golly.
Whoa.
And it was it's 2 weeks of classroom, a lot of memorization. The final exam took me about 7.5 hours just to get done. A lot of
I've
memorization.
heard people either really talk amazingly about this or polar opposite.
They hate
like,
it.
I could not
they
stand
hate
it.
it.
That's the one
See,
thing I don't want to do. So
Oh, absolutely. That's like I was like I don't think I'm a disappointment, but like my dad's like a super like intellectual math person, and so he was a accident investigator for a long time. Did the DWI stuff. I don't know if he ever did DRE, but he just loved it. He's like talking about the formulas. Like when I was a kid, he'd get all excited talking about it. I'm just like,
Oh, it's very much a nerd thing.
yeah.
Oh, very much so.
Well, I'm a nerd. I'm just a different kind, I guess. I don't know. I see that stuff, and I'm just like, no, get the litters go away. I don't want.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. And so I did traffic for 6 years. 3 of those years was a DWI unit working at night shift. Worked a lot of fatality accidents, arrested a lot of drunk drivers. And let's be honest, drunks are fun. I mean, you know, when you're getting talking to a drunk is fun. Maybe not so much the process. And you're talking 2
So
hours.
we're not endorsing the wrong behavior here, are we?
No.
Right.
As a police officer,
Context.
dealing with drunk drivers is fun. There we go. I cleared myself. But it can be, you know, like I don't.
It can be a lot of fun or like just.
Oh, it can be very
terrible
tedious.
time.
Yes, it's one of those things that a lot of guys don't like it because they're not good at it.
Yeah.
And where do you pay the price for that?
Court.
On the stand,
Yep.
in testimony. I had a defense attorney years ago take pity on me, and after he absolutely wiped the floor with me, said, I'm going to take you to lunch. He used to be a cop. I'm going to take you to lunch, and I want to tell you how to beat me.
wow.
And I have taken those lessons with me, and I saw him about 2 years later, and he goes, you did what I told you to.
That's awesome.
Oh, that was
That
great.
is.
And
Defense attorney with a soul.
Amazing.
and you know, most of them are. Most of them do. They're just doing a job. Most of them do. There's been a couple that I'll stop there.
Okay.
But
You know who else did a job?
Right.
yeah, wow, that's
Just doing a job.
ooh, okay. Where were we? Traffic. There we go. Traffic and DWI. Drink your drink there, Nate. Yeah. So I dug it, and working crashes. That's a lot of fun. It just sucks that someone has to get hurt for you to go out and get to do some of those things that you're taught how to do. But after about 6 years, I was like, I'm ready to go work days. You know, I'm now 2 kids deep. And so it's like I'm ready to stop living the vampire life. And so I got to go work days as a hit and run detective. We didn't have enough business for me to do hit and runs 40 hours a week. So then I got into truck enforcement. Loved that. I grew up in that environment. My grandpa owned a trucking company. And so
I always thought that might be interesting to do too.
oh, dude, it can be fun, but also it's very technical.
Right.
There would be days where I would go home just absolutely covered in grease and oil and just filthy, and just loved every minute of it. And it's funny. My dad, you know, he taught high school for almost 30 years, but he also drove trucks for my grandpa in the summer. So as soon as I finished the class where they talk about logbooks, I mean, I'm leaving Austin after passing that class, and I called my dad and I said, hey, let's talk about logbooks. And it got real quiet under the end of that phone. And he goes, uh-huh. I said, what kind of books did you and Peepaw keep? And he said, are you asking about the books that we showed the troopers or the books that we actually kept for what we were really doing? And I was like, God, just a bunch of crooks, my own family members. But that can get tedious as well. But again, it's a lot of fun. There's always a love-hate relationship between the trucking industry and DOT enforcement. But you develop a lot of contacts. You get to know a lot of people. And you know that's truly a safety thing. Because when you're talking about, we talk about reconstruction and energy and the way that crashes occur. You're talking about a car moving at 100 miles an hour, the kinetic energy of that, the foot-pounds of energy that happens in a dynamics of a crash are minuscule compared to an 80,000-pound truck at plain Jane 70 miles an hour. And so those safety inspections, those are a big thing. Towards the end of my time in traffic, I had a couple of really big hit and runs. that needed some actual detective work.
Oh.
And let's make it, I mean, I was the hit run detective. I wasn't a detective. I mean, I probably couldn't type up a subpoena or a search warrant or do an interview to save my life. But what I did know is a couple of the guys in the domestic violence unit. And very close to them, Sergeant Chavez was the sergeant, and I'd worked for him before. And so I needed some help on one of those wrecks. And so I took my entire stuff to those guys in DV. And after they laughed me off the floor because of the quality of my work, they helped me out.
Yeah.
And I had to do that twice with them on a couple of really big hit and runs. Fun fact here, the second hit and run that I worked was where a couple of kids got ejected from a car. One of them should have died. He should have died 3 or 4 times. In fact, he crashed twice on the helicopter on the ride to the hospital.
Physically.
Yes.
The helicopter's fine.
Yeah, no, he crashed.
Man, double
Sorry,
crash.
I wasn't trying to make a joke.
Yeah. 2 years later, he was a victim in one of my cases as a child crimes detective. Yep.
Wow.
So he came up here after he got out of the hospital and was able to talk to me. So anyway, so I got bit by the detective bug. Yeah. And I got some more.
Wow,
I'm sure
You want to talk about full circle stuff?
Like I'm trying to process, and it's like,
it's
next one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite
I
stories.
saved you, but
Yeah. Well, thankfully, it was just if there is such thing as a minor physical abuse case,
Right,
it was a
yeah.
minor physical abuse
Okay.
case. Yeah, so
Okay.
it wasn't that big a deal. So I got bit by the detective bug, and there was an opening in child crimes, and so I'd like to think that I had made a very positive. What's the word I'm looking for? Reputation as a traffic officer. And I fully expected to spend the rest of my career in traffic. I would have been perfectly happy about that, but I wanted more.
I think you were traffic when I got here.
When was that?
2016.
I just finished up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so May of 17 is when I transitioned over to child crimes.
Okay.
And, have y'all had anybody on child crimes yet? Either been in or is.
No, I think they all told me
I
to
don't
get
think
lost.
so.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, they all told me no.
Okay. So, our child crimes unit is responsible for all physical and sexual abuse investigations of kids under the age of 17. So I go from crashes, lots of math, put my nerd glasses on, get the calculator out, to the worst of the worst.
Right.
Did that for 3 years, and I wouldn't trade a minute of it. The group of men and women that I got to work with, that was back when the domestic violence unit had 4 child detectives, 4 domestic violence detectives, our 2 sex offender registry guys, and our ICAC detective. And man, what a team!
Yeah.
We had 2 different sergeants at the time, and I don't think I'll ever have nothing against what I'm doing now or what I may do in the future, but the job satisfaction that I got from that, I'll probably never equal that again. Between the quality of the work and you're really getting the opportunity to be a voice for those who can't defend themselves,
Yeah.
but the team that was around me.
Right.
We wanted for nothing, and I could go to a forensic interview and it's like, drop what you're doing. We got to go make sure this kid's safe. The
Yeah.
entire unit did it and nobody griped.
Right.
And you don't get that here. I mean, Nathan, if you had a search warrant you had to do and you go tell your crew, hey, we got to go run this warrant, how's that going to be received over there?
3 of them aren't going to hear me on the way to the elevator.
There you go. Exactly.
I'm just kidding. We
So,
all-
so we know who we're talking about, Stout. And so,
not property anymore.
oh, that's right. No, that's right. It's like even twice now. But the camaraderie was unmatched.
Yeah.
And so, but you have a shelf life in that unit.
Yeah.
You really do. While we're on that topic, we're always trying to talk about the stigma of mental health in law enforcement. At the end of my time there, I needed help, and it was apparent. And so, if there's any officer listening to this or anyone who's thinking about that, man, go. There ain't nothing that can equal. Man, EMDR is a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
And boy, let me tell you, if you go do that, clear out your schedule because you're going to be exhausted when you get through. Oh yeah.
How did you know it was time for you to get help? Like, what brought you to that?
Well,
choice?
we won't go into detail. What it boils down to is I had made some mistakes in some of my investigations, and as a result of that, it was recommended that I go get looked at. And 3 or 4 sessions later, wow. I mean, and I was noticing things at home. You know, like I said, my wife and I have been together for a long time. I really can't point to a time where we got into a knockout, drag down fight after we got married. Of course, you know, you're in high school together. You're going to get knockout, drag downs, but not after we got married. And I kept getting short. My parents were making comments. My in-laws were making comments. And I just like, I got to work. I got to work. You know, you clear one case, you go on to the next. You don't have time to process it.
Yeah.
You're talking about processing things that are not
they're not normal.
within
Right,
the
not
normal
at
human
all.
scope of things
At
to be
all.
processed. I mean, things that seeing them will impact and stick with an individual for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And these detectives are carrying 50 cases at a time.
Yeah.
I mean,
And let me put out there, I wasn't the best detective known to man working those cases. But, you know, you carry 30, 40 of them at a time.
Yeah.
And, you know, you clear one, you process the arrest, and then you come to work the next day, you got 4 more sitting in your chair. And, you know, we were lucky. You know, this is pre-COVID. And we, on average, the 4 of us were carrying about 30 to 40 cases a week. Or, per detective. Now we have, 6 detectives? And they're carrying 50 to 60 a pop.
yeah.
So, and that's another, we could have that discussion all day long. But loved my time in child crimes. And we had some fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Even now, it's a great group of people.
oh, yeah. For sure. There's only one detective there left since I was in. And so, but, you know, then it's like, okay, here we are. So we're talking 2020 now. So we're hitting year 13. And it's funny, I told my wife, and she loves to roll her eyes at me every time I have this conversation, but, you know, I'd never say never. I always said I'm never going to be a detective. I want to stay in traffic the rest of my life. I love writing tickets, working wrecks, finding drunks. Well, then I went to be a detective. I'm never going to promote. Well, okay, you know, maybe it's time. And it got to the point where I hit 13 years, and this department was changing, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I think there comes a time in everyone's career where you want to go, it's time to pass things down. You know, I mean, in no way, shape, or form am I on the downhill slide. I mean, I can go in 3 years. I don't want to go in 3. I mean, I want at least another 13, 14 years, but it's like, let's make sure this place stays in the same shape or in better shape than when I got here. Right. And what better way to do that as a sergeant?
Yeah.
And so I took the test at the height of COVID, which may or may not be the best thing in the world, smartest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But promoted in the summer of 2020 and got to go back to patrol. Now, keep in mind, I left patrol in 2011. And I did 6 years in traffic. And I did 3 years in child crimes.
Yeah.
So here I am, 9 years removed from any type of patrol work. And so I had a steep learning curve. But thankfully, I had a good group of sergeants to work around. I was assigned to the veteran night shift, so I wasn't completely surrounded by new people. Had a great lieutenant. He's an assistant chief now, and I worked with him for a year. And man, that was probably some of the best for me as a new sergeant. I love instruction. You know, it's funny. I told you at the very beginning I wanted to be a teacher. I actually started teaching at our academy in 2011. Started teaching field sobriety testing,
Sure.
and then I wound up teaching the vast majority of traffic stuff. Me and one other guy started teaching radar, LiDAR. So I love the instructive.
That's how I knew. You taught our
Yeah, I taught you a LiDAR class. Yeah, and probably your SFST refresher when you came in. But I love the instruction part, and so when I got bumped off the veteran night shift to go to the rookie shift, you know, you look at your job as a sergeant and it's like, are you a supervisor? Are you a coach? Are you a teacher? Are you a mentor? And it's really situational.
Yeah.
So when I got bumped off the veteran night shift, I go to the night shift at the average time of experience, 2 years.
Night A.
Yeah. No, actually back then it was no, it was for night A back then. Yeah, it was A. And so I spent more time as a coach and a teacher than I did as a supervisor. And it was great. You know,
See, that's what makes me love that shit. I like
Yes.
And even like in my job, you'll see the stuff they do, and it's sometimes the other guys will be like, what are they doing? I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like that, stupid, but that's awesome. Like, be aggressive. Go try to do police work. That's what makes me miss the street. And like, as stupid as it sounds, or shocking as it was for me, is actually why I miss being an FTO. Like just finding that those guys and girls who have that raw energy. Like, hey, I know there's bad guys. I want to go get them. And then you're just kind of rein them in a little bit. It's like, cool, let's do it without breaking the law. And then showing them how to do be effective.
Whitney, have you seen a forensic interview?
I used to be a forensic interviewer for
very
3.5 years.
So you want to know what my favorite phrase is now? Help me understand.
Help me understand. Oh, yeah, that's a good
If I hear that, I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Help me
Well,
understand.
it's so much better than going, why?
Why?
Why? Tell me why.
Don't say why.
Help me understand what your, that's probably, help me understand what your thought process was during this.
What made you decide?
And it's like, well, no. Let's consider this other alternative.
Yes.
I say, because if you were my sergeant when I was younger, my answer was usually a shrug.
So let's use our big boy words and let's talk it out.
Right.
But no, I mean, I loved being a sergeant on night shift. I'll be honest, as soon as that day shift opening was there, I'm gone. And so then you make the transition to days to a much more senior shift. And then eventually the senior shift in the department. Now you're a supervisor.
Yeah.
And I will unashamedly say that I recruited for my shift. I recruited for my sector. And my last year and a half on patrol, I was on days A. And I stacked it with a group of guys that, man, they ran around with their hair on fire. They did things right. They made my life... Okay, I was going to say they made my life easy as a sergeant, but that's not true.
I say they're doing a good job. They shouldn't.
They shouldn't, yeah. They kept me humble, and they taught me so much as a sergeant.
Yeah.
They taught me what their expectations were. They taught me how to manage my own expectations. And I think I would like to hope anyway, that they learned as much from them as they taught me. Yeah. And it was fun because I didn't have to do anything. Right. I'd show up on complex or critical incidents, and I'd just kind of go, you guys look like you got it. I'm going to go back to the car and get out of your way. Yeah. When they called me when they needed me, and if they didn't, I left them alone. And it was. And
you still get to be out in the field. You still get to see stuff. You get to show up to all the big stuff.
There is no greater job in this department than a patrol sergeant. You can get it to as much as you want or as little as you want, and you really get to affect the future and the path of this place, especially on night shift. But even then, we want to stay a responsibly aggressive department. Yeah. And it starts with the officers, but it's reinforced by the first line supervisors.
Yeah, we were talking not long ago, and the point was made that basically our job is dangerous, and someone was kind of advocating for a liability-minded position, which is understandable if you want to avoid liability at 100%, a rate of 100%. But just like guys on the street, you can't avoid liability 100%. You can't, just like you can't be 100% safe. So being a cop is dangerous work, and for the guys in the street, it's dangerous with injury and death, or mental toll, whatever else the case is. But for supervisors, your danger often comes in the form of liability, and the higher up you get in the chain of command, the more that looks less like physical danger and more like liability. But that responsibility is the same. You still have to accept that. And I think it's super important to have, especially like you said, a sergeant, lieutenant, who does not approach with a let's reduce liability by 100%. Because when you do that, police work will cease to happen, and your crime rate will go up, and your quality of life for your citizens will go up. And because your duty is to, just like officers kicking doors, they accept risk, you have to accept liability at some point.
My thought process was always, if your actions are governed by four things, if it's moral, ethical, legal, and within policy, go. We can work on the rest. Yep. If it becomes, and I always try to encourage newer sergeants, I've gotten to train a couple, go with that mindset. Because, I mean, we've all worked for those supervisors where it's like, it's my way, the highway, and you'll do it because I said so. Now,
even if it's not in policy.
Exactly.
And that pisses me off.
Yeah, you're just, you want to talk about liability.
Yeah.
You're going to hang yourself there.
Yeah.
But
or when they have more restrictive rules. It's like, no, you want to do that? Promote.
Yes.
Go be a chief somewhere.
Don't do it here.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right. And there's ways to mitigate that. And there is a happy medium with the understanding is if you make a decision, you'd better be able to articulate it. It's that simple.
Well, and I think guys and girls, you tend to make fewer mistakes when you're less stressed. And like one of the things that made me feel so at ease when I first got here, especially coming from the environments that I came from, was when at the time Chief Dye was talking to us, and he basically said, "You're going to mess up while you're here. You're going to violate policy while you're here. You may even violate the law. Like mistakes are going to happen. If those happen because you got confused or because it's just a mental error, it's not an error of the heart, and you're trying to do the right thing, I'm going to have your back 100% of the time." He said some consequences are going to be unavoidable, but if you're trying to do the right thing, I've got you. And I took that to heart, and I was just never really felt as like if I didn't know the answer to something, I was never like super stressed about, oh my God, I wonder what policy says. Maybe I should have been a little more than I was, but I just generally was like, hey, I'm going to do my best to do the right thing. And I always kind of had that confidence that things will fall into place. So it was as stressful as street work can be, it's as low stress as I think street work can be because that environment was created for us.
And again, that starts with the frontline supervisor. Yeah. I'm going to remove whatever roadblocks you're encountering to go do your job, while at the same time holding you accountable when you screw up. And that same expectation, mistakes are going to happen. Big whoop. We're going to talk about them. We're going to learn from them. If there are some consequences, it's going to have to happen, but we're not going to dwell on them. And I'm not going to hold that over your head. So
that's the big thing, too, especially when it comes to discipline. And again, I'm speaking as someone who's never in the police world been in a position of having a discipline, but I guess as the FTO a bit. But every officer is a massive investment, with time, money. You put your reputation on the line, letting this person carry a badge for your city and a gun. So if you can take a mistake and use it to mold them, and you think they're an individual who will learn from that, chances have it the product of an officer you're going to wind up on the back end is going to be superior to the one had they never made the mistake. So take that mistake as an opportunity to try to mold them and move forward instead of just hammer them until they stop doing stuff. And unfortunately, there's some people that they take that hammer approach because they don't want you doing a lot of stuff. And the less you do, then the less liability they see.
Well, some people take that hammer approach because it's the easy button.
That too.
It's it's very easy for me as a supervisor to look someone dead in the eye that I've made no attempt to get to know, no attempt to understand what drives them, what their motivations are, what their family is like, what are they going through at home? Are things good, are things bad? And just and not point out the good things and just only point out the bad things. That's easy. That's the easy part about being a sergeant. The hard part is building, first and foremost, those relationships with your subordinates, and then maintaining those relationships. And in fact, I found that if you go through that effort, so that we'll keep it in terms of a bid cycle, what we have here. If I don't go through that effort up front and maintain that over the course of 6 months, when the time comes for us to have a difficult conversation, it's hard.
Right.
Versus I've laid that foundation. I've developed that relationship. All right, now we got to have a hard conversation. It's in fact easier.
Right.
It's easier to get to know that.
Yeah, I love that. It's like creating space for you created grace and then using the interpersonal skills. Now it gives way to that because without having that, then you can't really be prepared to, of course, now accountability, responsibility. It's almost like an expectation, and I'm willing to do that with you since now you've developed that sense of relationship with me. It feels easier.
Yeah.
And you brought up that word expectation. Make your expectations known.
Yeah.
You can't hold somebody accountable for something you have in your head. It's like, you didn't do it the way that I did it up here, so we're going to have problems now.
Right.
So spend a lot of time on patrol. Loved it, and I love patrol. I'd go back in a heartbeat. Sorry, Carlos.
Is that a hint?
I'm staying. I'm staying put.
So transitioning to your role now, obviously you were supervisor in patrol. That's obvious. People understand you're going to accidents, you're going to shootings, you're answering questions about reports, you're approving reports, things such as that. Now you're a supervisor over the academy and recruiting.
Personnel and training, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
That is an entirely different dynamic. Because as a patrol sergeant, so you have the lieutenant, and then you have 3 or 4 sergeants, and then each sergeant is responsible for 5 or 6 people. While you still maintain that very small view of the people that you're responsible for, you're still a part of a much wider process with a very clear mission and very outlined and defined goals. Now you go to a small unit like personnel and training to where we have a lieutenant, there's me, the sergeant, then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 between civilians and sworn officers. Very, very small, and the dynamic completely changes because while you still have a mission and a goal, it's less defined, and there's a lot of room for interpretation. And then doing what we do, I think you said it, we are responsible for the future of this agency. Number one, we're responsible for doing what we can to drive up those testing numbers to give us a better pool of individuals within the guidelines of what the civil service regulations say and what the executive command staff says these are our minimum requirements. And then on top of that, now we have a test. And we have those that pass the test, we have those that don't pass the test. So now we have to not only work through our own internal processes, but also what TCOL says. And so, TCOL, the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, does have some regulations and outlines what we can and cannot do in the background process.
Really?
Yes.
Can you go into that at all?
Sure. It's like it's funny. We had a meeting about this morning, but 2 weeks ago I went to the TCOL conferences, and there's some things that are changing. Some of those I won't go into here. It'd take forever. But for example, they're going to start changing some of the things, the way we do things in the background process, as it pertains when you submit somebody for a medical or a psychological evaluation. So it's going to extend our process time-wise a little bit more.
It's always good.
Yep. And so, but you're always looking for ways to be more efficient while still being thorough. And so our next test, we haven't put it up on the website yet. It's going to be March 1st. And so we've got some time between now and then. Usually we stack them, pack them, and rack them. But this one, just between the way that the next academy class is starting in January and the holidays that are coming up, and then I don't know. We haven't published it yet, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be testing down in Huntsville at Sam Houston State University. That hasn't been confirmed yet or not. I knew we'd hit one there. But I think that's going to be a thing too. So we may be running dual testing sites. And so, we're trying to make as much bang for our buck as we can to get as many people in the seats as we can. And so, we are the gatekeepers for who walks through the doors. And so that's basics, that's laterals. And so what we wind up running into is, are we going to be picky? Are we going to be lenient? Are we going to provide grace, as you mentioned earlier? Or are we going to make sure that I'm going to have someone that I trust, that if they're answering a call with Nathan Height, that they're not going to get Nathan hurt or themselves hurt? Or are they going to make a mistake that puts us in the news? Or are we going to be the next agency that causes a problem across the country because someone made a poor choice? And so that's a heavy load for our background investigators.
Because so much of it's intangible.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can't quite put your finger on it. And even then, you can still follow all the processes that we have and follow your gut feelings and the positive things that everybody says. It's still a toss-up. You still don't know what you're getting. So then now we have the academy. And so, going to COG versus the internal academy, 2 totally different animals. And so I don't want to disparage COG, but COG didn't prepare me physically to be a police officer here at all. And so we do now. Here, our physical demands are pretty impressive. And so now we have an academy that is both designed to prepare you physically And when I say mentally, I'm talking twofold. Number one, you got to make sure you know what the law says. What does case law say? What does the Supreme Court said about this topic? What is the penal code operation here? And so you have to make sure that you have instructors that are capable of conveying that information effectively, and then making sure that it's being done in a timely manner, but also mentally tuning some of these folks up ready to go. And that's been some of the complaints that I've heard, both from field training officers as well as from what I've seen of the folks coming in, and this may be going back to the generational issue we talked, and is it a communication problem? But it's taking us longer to get these basic recruits to flip that switch to really get involved and engage in our program versus just going through the motions. I'm just here I'm going to watch the PowerPoint, I'm going to ask questions, I'm going to take the test and make the highest grade on it, but I'm not really getting geared up here for what it means to have that lifestyle change of being a police officer. Now, let's be honest, this is a lifestyle change.
So how do you mean? 'Cause are you referring to like they're getting the material from, the penal code lesson, but not applying it in real life? Or are you saying more just like an overall mindset?
The overall mindset, right? It's not just, sometimes they're coming in and I'm going to come in and I'm going to do, how do I put this? I don't want to say it's the bare minimum because that's not quite correct. What it is they're coming in and they're not getting their focus attenuated on how much of a lifestyle change this really is. This is not where, like for example, when I went through pharmacy tech school, you come in, you take a class, you get a lot of on-the-job training, but you have a pharmacist that still backs you up and checks your work, right? There ain't none of that out here. I mean, sure, you have a sergeant that may review your report, and hopefully your FTOs, your other coworkers can kind of keep you in check if things go awry, but they're not quite switching on mentally. They think it's just a 9-to-5 job. And so it's upon me, the training cadre, and that's not just the academy coordinator, the firearms, the range master, the defensive tactics instructor. That's not who just that is. We're talking, even Whitney, when you come in and you talk to our recruits for victim services and some of our domestic violence stuff,
Right.
you know what kind of burden that is. And it's like, are you really ready to encounter this?
Yeah.
Are you going to be, let's talk about from the physicality and the danger aspect. We had a recruit years ago that had never been in a fight before. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Let's see what happens. So they put the red man on, and he gets popped in the nose, and he goes, I'm done. I want out. Right. And I will always have the utmost respect for that young man for being willing to say,
absolutely,
yeah,
this ain't for me.
Yeah.
But he had also come to terms with, this is the mindset, and I don't have it, so I'm out.
Which is so normal.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's just taking us a little longer to getting them to understand this is not a 9-to-5 gig. You're not coming in. Say it again.
You think it's the gravity they're not quite grasping?
No, and that's something that we at the training building have tried to figure out. Where's the disconnect? Right. And we haven't quite put our finger on it yet because we're still able to, I think the product that we're putting out and putting on the street is okay. I mean,
I've seen some of the new guys doing some great work.
Yeah, it's there. I'd love for the training cadre to take credit for that, and I might as well anyway. But I don't know. Yeah. And like I said, I've had some training experience. I'm not the end all be all. I certainly don't consider myself an expert. We have some training experts here. We really do, and I pick their brains as much as I can. But I don't know. So it's as much as it is trial and error.
Yeah.
What works, what doesn't work, and being open to, okay, well, that didn't work. So we're going to take those lessons learned and we're going to come up with a new lesson plan and try this and see if this works.
Right. What's funny is the tendency not to just completely immerse yourself into the job and the culture on a 24/7 basis, while probably makes you slower on the uptick becoming a police officer. also probably helps out on the mental health side.
Oh, for sure.
They're probably more well adjusted than like I was when I first started.
Oh yeah. When I remember when I started, it was recommended quite often that I maintain appropriate and respectful friendships with people outside of police work.
Right.
And I did, and I think that's helped me out a bunch. You get a bunch of cops together, and that can go off the rails fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But if that's all we're talking about, that's all we're thinking about.
Yeah. No. Even in my cop friends, I don't.
No.
Like, there's a few people's houses we go over to. I'm big on that. Like,
Hey, we ain't talking about
I
work.
give you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? How's the? I haven't seen you in a couple months. How's your caseload? Sucks. Next, let's talk about something else.
Let's talk about the kids' baseball team.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like that. And so it's trial and error right now. And I've only been in there. I've been in less than a year. And so I'm still learning. Thankfully I've got, and I'm not just saying this because he's sitting behind me, but and that's one of the things that drew me to this unit is
Carlos?
Well, not Carlos specifically.
Big question mark.
Mhm. I can tell he's smiling
Does
behind
your
me.
wife know?
Yeah. But the people that are already there, we've got Kyle and Garrett and Elon and Carlos, and I've got some the background investigators, Elon, LJ, and the work that they do is just, they need very little from me.
Right.
But I still want to make sure that I'm available to them and doing what I can to learn their jobs, to make sure that we talked about removing roadblocks earlier. I think that's one of my biggest goals at training, is to make sure that, they're the experts. Let's be honest, I'm not an expert. There's a couple things in this mixed up police world that I consider myself to be an expert in, and this ain't one of them yet. And so I want to make sure that the experts are allowed to do their job, to do it effectively, and that's my goal right now in training. And so, we got our next academy class starting in January. We still don't know how many we're going to get yet. We still have, I want to say, 8 in process that we're getting ready to finish up. But we're looking at, and don't quote me on this, but we're hoping to start an academy class with 4 basics and 5 or 6 laterals.
Oh, good.
So we're getting some numbers up there.
Which is crazy because when I hired on, I don't even know how many there were total. It had to be 10, 12
Oh, yeah.
basics, and
There
were
were
6 or 7 laterals.
There were some classes where we had almost 20 basic students.
Man.
When I was teaching SFSTs, it was like you try to have 1 drinker for every 2 students. So I was having to find 10 to 12 people to come willing to get drunk on the weekend. That's not hard to find.
I was going to say,
It's not
you
difficult.
have my number. Don't
No,
just
it's not. Oh, and so what's funny is I hated using cops for those classes.
It's the alcoholism?
No.
Okay.
But it was the tendency. So the rule was, we're chasing rabbits now, but it's a fun topic.
Perception.
It's a fun topic. So for anybody who doesn't know, when we teach the field sobriety test to our, have you participated in this, Whitney?
No.
Okay.
I don't drink, so.
So when
Perfect.
when we teach,
You're going to be great.
well, I'll tell you what happens. So when we teach the field sobriety test to our recruits, you bring in regular Joes and you get them drunk. You give them 80 proof alcohol. Then you take their body weight, and then you measure it down to the milliliter, and you have X amount to drink in a 2-hour time period on an empty stomach. And so it's designed to get you to plateau, and then we feed you after the first hour.
Oh.
And then so the way the science works is you level out, and it gives us enough time for the recruits to be able to test you in the field sobriety battery. And I never used cops, because I knew at one point I'm going to get some drunk police officer that's going to go, you're doing it wrong. Your finger's too close, and just,
100%.
Oh, for sure. Now, there was one class where I scrambled, and I was in child crimes still. And so I used my brethren in child crimes. That was a fun experience. I've also,
Everybody does know that people in child crimes are among the most eccentric.
Slightly. I used all
best
the
way
DCAC
possible.
staff one year.
Wow.
I used the entire forensic interview staff. That was a lot of fun. We had to send somebody home with an IV because she really tied one on. Oh, yeah, it was fun.
Whoa.
God.
Love her to death.
Whoa.
I'm sure that The detective that took her home is still cleaning puke out of his floorboard.
Wow.
But
no.
if she sees this, she's going to call me and just chew my butt out. I didn't use her name, so.
Yeah, no.
We didn't use no names. But that's always a lot of fun to drink. I've used my wife
See,
so many times. My wife has done the field.
just on Thursdays.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. No, this is really for class. So she's done it for DRE and she's done it for field sobriety that she could.
Did she get high?
No. So for DRE, we still just do alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the only place that's ever done a great.
I mean, it makes sense.
It does. Yeah,
she needs a
no,
certificate.
this is
Like
still
she
Texas.
should be awarded with a certificate at this point.
Well, she comes in and one of the questions is, so the recruits do the field sobriety battery. They don't know what BAC these folks are at. Some folks are above, some folks are below. And
Blood alcohol content?
Correct. Because you try to get them at about a 0.1 to a 0.11 because any first phase rookie can identify someone twice over the legal limit. Let's be honest.
See, I want to test them. Can you?
Yes. And so she would always be over the legal limit. And because she had done the tests so many times, she nailed the walk and turn in one leg stand.
Right.
And so the question is, so at the end of the night, you bring all of the drinkers in together, which is always interesting because they're all drunk, they're all loud, they're all having a great time.
Yeah.
I need y'all to be quiet while I do some instruction here, so bear with me. But you'd always say, hey, this is, everybody say hello to Jamie. Hi, Jamie. How many of you would take Jamie to jail based upon what you saw?
Right.
And there would always be very few hands. And so, of course, we won't get into technical, but, the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the eye test that we do, it's involuntary. You can't control it, even no matter what tolerance you have. You can on the walk and turn and one leg stand based upon your tolerance and practice. And so, because she done it so much, everybody will, well, she doesn't look like a drunk. And my wife doesn't. She doesn't get loud when she drinks, and so it would always be nobody would want to take her to jail, and I'd go, she's at a 0.11, so you just let an intoxicated driver go.
Wow.
And so they learned that lesson. Versus the part we did have one of my wife's friends came with us one time. She doesn't drink. She passed out at a 0.04.
Shut up.
Passed.
See, I know. I would not
clean out.
participate. See, then my husband is going to be calling and like, what did y'all do with my wife?
Oh, no. He'll be there recording.
Yeah,
Fine.
and there's sometimes like I'll get somebody that comes in and they go, I changed my mind, I don't want to drink. So what I'll do is I'll take some whiskey and mix it with some water and just spray it on their clothing, so they smell like a drunk, but they're stone cold sober.
Gotcha.
And just to see what their reactions are.
Interesting.
I don't like doing that because it sometimes defeats the purpose of the test, but it's also a great teaching point.
Be a little placebo.
Correct. To not make sure we're using all of the information available to us, not just one part of our senses.
Right. Yeah, I've always wanted to do it, but I don't know. It's like the word risk of sounding crude. It almost strikes me as like when you're trying really hard to have a kid and you making something really fun, clinical, and not as fun.
Yes. So that's why you only do it every once in a while.
Right.
And we're always looking for volunteers. And you have a couple of options when you do it. When you go through the school, you can I'm a beer drinker. And so beer drinking's rough on the SFSTs because you got to drink like a 12-pack in 2 hours. You get full.
Done.
You get full. You get full pretty quick. Wine is iffy because you really can't control the alcohol content in it. Well, you get
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean, because it varies. So because the science that when we look at behind getting somebody over a 0.08 is exact. When I say, like, Nathan, I would weigh you according to your weight, I have a chart that's provided by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that I'm going to give you X amount of milliliters of 80 proof alcohol in this time period to get you at this BAC. And so it's very precise. But it's a fun class to teach.
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of patience for drunks. Not so much anymore. I think I'm just getting older, but
'Cause I feel like my patience is going the opposite direction.
oh no,
I don't deal with them every day anymore.
I
so
have
part of it.
lost. I mean, there were a couple of times my last couple of months on patrol. I was just like, oh, I've got too short a fuse for this. I got to walk away. But I loved, and I still get to teach that. I mean, I mean, it's funny being the academy sergeant. I can go teach whatever I want to. I haven't taught SFSTs in a long time. We have a couple of guys that are really good at doing that. They've done a good job at it. I still teach DRE. DRE is a lot more involved.
Well, we can't have that many instructors, right?
No, you can have as many as you want.
But I'm saying, like, in our department right now, we got you and how many else?
Well, now I think it's me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we got 6 now.
Oh, wow.
For SFST.
That's surprising. No, yeah, I meant like the DRE
DRE?
side.
No. So I'm the only instructor.
Right.
There's only 4 of us total that are certified DREs.
Wow.
Yeah. So, because with Whitney DRE, what you have to do with that is, so you have a 2-week classroom program, but part of that, just like we do with SFSTs, you got to evaluate high people. Now, like you can go to Colorado and you can do what's called a green lab, which is sponsored by a couple of universities, and they will bring you in marijuana, gummies, smoke, or THC vape.
Yeah.
But they know exactly what
Do you take
percentage it's
hops
at.
for that?
I don't know. I haven't been to Colorado.
I
let's
used to
ask.
live in Colorado, and I actually did a ride along in Colorado for Colorado Springs Police
Oh, yeah?
Department when I thought I wanted to be a cop. I
that's
changed
right,
my
yeah.
mind because I was like, I want to do victim services. But yes, they told me about that. Was
The Green Lab. Yep.
Yes.
And so you get to test people. But that's under very strictly tightly controlled. So for DRE, you go through the 2-week-long classroom process. But when you're done, you got to find a way to evaluate people that are under the influence of substances other than alcohol. And there's,
What better place in the world than Dallas County?
well, we don't do that anymore.
Oh, never mind.
I could go into detail, but that really gets into the political side of things. And so I'm going
Okay.
to stay away from that. So now we have to go down to the Bexar County Jail or the Harris County Jail.
Really good
Mm-hmm.
option.
And so you're standing there in the...
Wait, you do the same thing, but you just do it 4 hours away?
Yes.
I love the government. They're so cool.
We can talk offline about that. But you're literally standing around. So we'll go back to Lou since you've been to Lou Sterrett. So you're standing around the nursing line, and you're just watching folks come in, and you go, there's a tweaker. So then you go real quickly, check your pulse, you check their eyes real quick, and you go, this person's a candidate.
Yeah.
And then so the students, we divide them into groups of 2 or 3, and they're required to do 15 evaluations under people that we suspect are under this influence of drugs other than alcohol. And we'll get them to pee in a cup right there. And so we have a 9-panel urine test. And so the instructor has that set to the side. The student does their evaluation, and then we peel the label off the urine test, and we go, yep, your call was correct here, here, and here. You missed that one, which is usually the case. And we do that for about a week and a half until the students.
Is that how it is? I thought it was like a 6-month thing.
No. So it used to be.
Oh, okay. I remember being in Lou's and having like troopers or whoever come up and be like, hey, can I test your guy? At first I didn't know what they were doing. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, who are you? Go away. Yeah.
But then you're like, yeah, I'm here for 6 months doing this crap. It's like,
Yep.
oh,
So
God.
it used to take about 6 weeks, depending on, and it used to be when we would come in and we would let DART know, we would let DPD know, hey, we're here and here's what we're doing, and they'd go usually find all the transients that are under the influence of various substances, and you'd always get in heroin, PCP, and meth, and cocaine, and marijuana's a dime a dozen. But you always like when the LSD folks would come in, and but.
What's the test for PCP? Like, do you want to kill me right now?
Yeah. Well, see, it's so much fun. If you find someone who's under the influence of PCP and they know it, they're usually pretty chill.
Really?
Yes. Because they know how it affects their bodies. I had somebody one night, we're testing someone, peeled off his thumbnail and threw it at me. Didn't feel a thing. I'm sorry, big toe. Just threw it at me.
Toenail.
Yeah, PCP is nasty.
Man.
LSD is a lot of fun.
To observe.
Yes. Thank you for having me clarify that. Yeah, not from personal knowledge. I'm gonna get that random drug test after this is released. But so you remember the intoxilizer rooms at Lou Sterrett, how tiny they were? So these rooms are smaller than this room here. And so
They stopped using it for toxilizing and for a while.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you can cut that out.
Dime, dime some people out
A couple
there.
of the old DVD sergeants got fired. Sorry.
No, I was going to take it in a different direction. I'll keep my mouth shut. But so part of the evaluation is you do what's called darkroom checks. That's where you check their pupil size with all the lights turned off. Well, what's running right next to Lou Sterrett? Do you know? That makes a lot of noise at times. Train tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it just so happened, don't get ahead of me, while I'm going through, me and an Irving officer who's one of my closest friends and a Tarrant County deputy, we're all working together. So you shine a pin light in their eyes. It just so happened we're all in the dark. There's four cops in there plus the intoxicated subject. We hit him in the light with the eyeball with the light, and a train let loose on its horn. This fellow thought there was a train coming at him. He jumped in. Of course, it's pitch black in this room. He gets up and makes a beeline. And, of course, he's running. And we only have about, maybe 5 feet,
Yeah,
6
maybe.
feet max. And runs headfirst into the door, knocks himself out cold.
No.
What's in your light, dude?
It's just a pin light, just a good old-fashioned medical pin
Wow.
light. So,
Oh, that's
yeah. So, like dealing with drunks, DRE can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It can be pretty – depends on what they're under the influence of. If
Yeah.
they're under the influence of meth or some type of stimulant, meth, cocaine, they won't shut up. They won't quit moving around, and it's hard to do things. Now, if they're under, like, say, heroin or an opioid or, Ambien DWIs, those are wild. You'll see
I've heard about those.
You'll see HGN you ain't never saw before.
Really?
Yes, especially vertical. I mean, it looks like someone's bouncing a basketball.
What is? I know we're getting really up there in time. Sorry, Carlos. But how does that work from a prosecutorial perspective? Like, because I know people have taken Ambien and by no intention of their own found themselves driving, found themselves lost. Like,
Well, here's how this works. So think about this. You work at downtown Dallas, and you live in, let's say, North Hills, right? North Richardson Hills. And you want to have a solid night's sleep. And you know it takes about 30 to 40 minutes for you to get home. So you take an Ambien. It takes about an hour to kick in. And so you know that as soon as you get home, you have enough time to get in your PJs and go get into bed. You're going to have the best sleep of your life. Well, you didn't plan on that crash at 635 and I-35, and now you're stuck in traffic for 20 minutes. Next thing you know, you wind up crashing into cars in South Grand Prairie. I say that because that was the interview that I had. But remember that the definition of intoxication, there's no culpable mental state to it. There's there's no intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or criminal negligence. There's no culpable mental state.
so theoretically, you could be poisoned and still charged.
Correct.
Oh wow,
You could take a Benadryl.
Wow.
I did not know that.
Yep. A person, person commits an offense if they operate a motor vehicle while intoxicated in a public place. That's it. Now, of course, public place and intoxication have some pretty detailed definitions,
Sure.
but that's it.
Man,
Stay home
Yes.
and take your
Just be smart about it.
medication.
yeah, I had no desire to ever try that. Like the best sleep of your life stuff sounds fantastic, but I've heard so many horror stories about people start hallucinating.
Yeah.
Oh, my uncle led some county deputies in South Texas on a 2-hour pursuit under the influence of Ambien. Woke up, had no clue.
Man.
Anyway, but yeah, so
Did he get away? Like he
Oh
woke
no,
up
no,
in
he,
your
no, he,
house,
he
or-
wrecked
oh.
out, got caught. Yeah, and of course, South Texas, they had no clue what DRE was, so they didn't
Right.
they didn't do much with it. But yeah, DRE is a lot of fun. It's hard, but
Yeah,
it's a lot of
sounds
fun.
Excuse me. Well, I'm gonna leave all that numbers and smart guy stuff to y'all.
We'll take it.
Well, I sure appreciate you sitting down with us, and sorry for everybody for going a little bit long. That's why I knew whenever you said you were going to yap, I was like, cool.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, I haven't checked my
Yeah.
watch. It's like we allotted an hour, and here we are, an hour and a half.
Here we
Yeah.
go. You know,
that's fun.
fun topics.
Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you, Whitney, as
Yeah.
always, and thank you, Carlos. All right, guys. Till next time.